Hi, I'm Aaron. He hit me, hard enough to leave a mark under my eye. And my parents, they saw it. They looked straight at me, then turned away. He laughed from the armchair and said, "Classy little family you've got, babe." That night, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. I just sat there, quiet, small, bruised. A towel pressed under my cheek, wet and beginning to turn warm. The sting had dulled by then. But the heat of humiliation? That burned slower. Still, I lit a candle. And 30 minutes later, when the front door clicked again, I wasn't the one who stayed down. But let me ask you something before we go on. Have you ever stayed silent to keep the peace, only to realize it cost you everything? Drop a comment. What time is it where you are right now? And would you have stood up too? The moment I heard the knock, my body froze. Not from fear, but from reflex. Trauma drills itself into the bones. You don't think you brace? I didn't move from the couch. I just sat there, slouched against the armrest, the towel soaking into my cheek. The skin underneath throbbed, swollen, discolored. I hadn't cried. Crying makes the pain louder. Silence wraps it tight. At least that's what I told myself. The door opened before I could get up. No knock. No, "Hey, sweetheart." Just the sound of grocery bags and the faint scent of my mother's favorite detergent. Something lavender, something gentle. A lie in bottle form. They walked in like always, as if this house was still home to them. I turned my head slightly. That's all it took. My mother stopped mid-step. Her hand, still curled around a gallon of milk, trembled just a little. Not enough to drop it, just enough to betray her composure. My father's eyes scanned my face, not in shock, but in assessment. He was calculating something. The bruise, maybe, or how long it would take before I'd cover it up. No one said anything. Behind me, the TV was playing something stupid. A rerun of a game show, loud and bright and utterly wrong for the weight that had just filled the room. Then, like he always did, Bryce appeared. Shirtless, beer in hand, that lopsided grin on his face like this was all a private joke. He leaned against the doorframe and said, "Well, look at that. The polite little family made their rounds." He didn't bother pretending. He didn't even flinch. My father gave a tight nod. My mother? She looked at the floor. They walked past me into the kitchen, placed the bags on the counter, straightened them like props. I didn't speak, didn't blink. Then they left. The door clicked shut behind them with a softness that felt like betrayal. No raised voices. No questions. Not even a single, "Are you okay?" Bryce belched, dropped into the recliner, and turned the volume up 2 notches. I touched the bruise again, not to soothe it, to remember. It hadn't started that night. That's the thing no one tells you. It never starts with fists. It starts smaller, sharper. Words designed to cut, but dressed up as concern. Guilt layered under charm. Control that calls itself care. 2 hours earlier, I had said it out loud for the first time. Really said it. "Stop treating me like something you bought at a discount," I snapped. I was standing at the sink. He was leaning against the fridge, sipping his beer like nothing mattered. He didn't flinch, didn't react. Just looked at me like I'd interrupted the game. "You done?" he said, flat. "No, I'm not." That was all it took. The slap came so fast I didn't even register the movement. Just sound. A crack. The blur of motion. My head snapped sideways and hit the cabinet handle on the way down. For a second, I didn't breathe. Couldn't. The sting bloomed instantly. My cheek burned. My ear rang. The floor felt hard under my knees. Cold tile and silence. Then I heard him sigh. "Aaron, come on," he muttered. "You always push. You always gotta make it a thing." I don't remember nodding, but I know I didn't argue. That was the training. The conditioning. Flinch, freeze, comply. I pressed one palm to the floor to steady myself and stood up slowly. No help from him. He was already halfway back to the recliner. He didn't say sorry again, just cracked open another beer and turned up the volume. I walked to the bathroom, closed the door. Not all the way. Never all the way. He didn't like closed doors. I leaned over the sink and reached for a clean washcloth, ran cold water, pressed it gently against my lip. Red bloomed in the fibers like ink. I didn't flinch when I saw it, just stared at the reflection. The woman in the mirror looked older, not by age, but by erosion. I studied the bruise that had begun to rise under my eye. Blue, purple, raw. You don't matter to him. The thought came uninvited. I swallowed it. You don't matter to them either. That one landed harder. But I exist. I whispered it, not to feel strong, but to remember I was still there. Under the bruises, beneath the silence, I was still there. Then I picked up my phone, scrolled to a message thread labeled only with the letter N. I typed one word, ready, and I hit send. 32 minutes after I pressed send, the front door lock clicked again. Not Bryce. Not my parents. It was Nina. She didn't knock. Didn't need to. I'd given her a key 6 months ago and I still believed I wouldn't need to use it. She stepped in wearing a thick coat, hair tied back, no makeup, face pale from the mountain cold. But her eyes, they were fire. No words, just one quick glance at the bruise, then the rest of her focus went into movement. She placed a black duffel bag gently on the floor beside the couch and pulled a slim navy folder from under her arm. I didn't speak. She didn't ask. She walked to the kitchen, opened the fridge, scanned it like it mattered, then shut it again. Still smells like him, she said flatly. I gave a small nod. That was all I had to offer. Then we got to work. She unzipped the bag. Inside, meticulously packed, was everything we'd prepared in pieces over the last year. Slowly, quietly, while I pretended to be fine. A toothbrush, a flash drive, a burner phone, photos of my injuries, time-stamped, notes from sessions with my therapist, copies of text messages with hidden threats written like affection. The night he locked me outside. The voicemail where he whispered, "No one would believe you." And then the power of attorney, filed 6 weeks ago, notarized in a quiet office south of town. It gave me full control over every shared asset. Bryce never knew. He'd signed it during a fake refinancing rush when I told him it was a bank form. I told myself it was insurance. But deep down, I knew it was survival. Nina laid out every item like a surgeon preparing for an operation. Calm. Precise. This, she said, holding up the flash drive, goes to the police the minute you're safe. Not before. I nodded. I paid the deposit on the apartment. Don't argue, it's under my name. You're just staying there. Indefinitely. Still, no words from me. Just breath. One inhale, one exhale. Then I reached into the drawer next to the stove, pulled out a thick black envelope, the kind meant for funerals or secrets. I slid a copy of the transfer logs inside, marked every transaction Bryce had made behind my back. Poker sites, offshore betting, unregistered usernames. At the bottom, I slipped in one yellow sticky note. You'll need a lawyer, not another beer. I sealed it quietly, laid it beside his recliner, and waited. Because he always wakes up angry when the beer runs out. The envelope sat next to his beer like a lit fuse. I didn't touch it again. The room was still, too still. Nina stood by the hallway, arms crossed, duffel slung over one shoulder. She didn't look scared. She looked ready. The recliner creaked. He stirred. A grunt, the sound of bottle glass rolling across his chest and hitting the carpet. Then silence again. I held my breath without realizing I had. Then I heard the floor shift. Footsteps, lazy, then faster. Bryce appeared in the doorway, half asleep, shirt wrinkled, beer-stale breath sharp in the air. His eyes darted to the envelope. He frowned. Picked it up. What the hell is this? I didn't answer. He slid a finger under the flap, pulled out the documents, the red circles, the statement copies. The note. His smirk cracked. The hell is this, Aaron? My name didn't sound like a question. It sounded like a weapon. I stepped forward, slow, controlled. Those are your withdrawals, the money you took, the accounts I froze this morning. He took a step toward me, fast. I didn't flinch, but I didn't need to. Nina stepped out from behind the hallway corner, phone in hand, camera already recording. Step back, Bryce, she said. Her voice had no tremble, He froze, confused, then furious. "You set me up?" he barked. "You dragged your little social worker into this in my house?" "It's our house," I said calmly, "and she's not here as a friend." "What the hell does that mean?" "It means," I said, "you don't get to raise your voice in here anymore." He looked between us, his breathing quickened, panic and pride wrestling behind his eyes. Then he stepped forward and grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but firm. Too familiar. That was his mistake. Nina lifted the phone higher. "This is being streamed," she said. "Let go." He did, immediately, like the skin on my wrist had burned him. "You want to go to war, Aaron?" he spat. "You think people will take your side after everything?" "I gave you everything. This roof, that car. I put up with your moods, your breakdowns." I raised my voice for the first time. Not a yell, just sharp. "I recorded you," I said. "All of it." He blinked. "What?" I nodded toward the living room. "The voicemail, the threats, the night you locked me out in the snow. Every bruise, every word, they're on file." Nina added, "With the DA's office as of this morning." That was when his eyes changed, the confidence drained. And underneath it? Fear. Real, trembling, feral fear. I stepped forward. Just one step, enough to remind him that I wasn't the same woman who whispered apologies after bruises. "Smile, Bryce," I said quietly. "You're finally on camera." The knock came 15 minutes later. Not timid, not aggressive, just official. 2 solid raps. Bryce turned toward the door, already unraveling. He'd been pacing, muttering, waving the envelope like a man holding a lit match and still denying there was fire. "You actually called them?" he said. "You called the cops on your own husband?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The knock came again. He looked at me, then at Nina, still filming, still silent. He moved to the door, opened it fast. 2 officers stood there. One was a younger man, early 30s, close-cropped hair, a hardened jaw. The other was a woman, late 40s, her badge clipped next to a calm, unreadable face. Bryce straightened his posture, dropped the envelope onto the floor like it didn't matter. "Officer, thank God. She's lost it. She's making things up. She's got her friend hiding in here, trying to ambush me." The woman stepped forward. "Are you Bryce Archer?" He hesitated. "Yeah." "Step aside, please." She walked past him without another word. The younger officer made eye contact with me. "Are you Aaron Wexler?" I nodded. He scanned the room quickly, then motioned to Nina. "Camera?" "Recording and backed up," Nina replied. "Would you like the link?" He nodded, professional but with a flicker of respect in his expression. I moved to the table where Nina had laid out the Navy folder. Inside, documents, timestamps, notarized photos, and medical notes from the urgent care visit 3 months ago. The one where I told them I'd tripped on the stairs. I handed it over. The officer opened it, scanned the first 2 pages. His brows furrowed. "You did all this yourself?" "Yes," I said. "Because I didn't think anyone else would." The woman officer turned to Bryce. "Sir, we're detaining you under suspicion of domestic battery and financial abuse. You'll be processed and questioned. If you resist, we'll escalate." Bryce's face changed, contorted somewhere between rage and disbelief. "You're arresting me? You're believing this?" "Not believing," the woman replied. "Reviewing. You'll have your chance." As she moved to cuff him, he jerked slightly. A reflex, a twitch. The younger officer didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, calm but firm. "Don't." And just like that, Bryce stopped. They read him his rights. Not in a movie voice, just factual, cold, true. As they led him to the door, he twisted his head back toward me. "You're ruining my life," he spat. I didn't flinch. I met his eyes. "No," I said softly. "I'm reclaiming mine." The door shut behind them, and the silence they left behind? It didn't feel empty. It felt clean. That night I didn't sleep. Not from fear. From stillness, The kind that settles over your body when you finally stopped bracing for impact. When your bones realize they're not shields anymore. The apartment was quiet. Nina had stayed until just after midnight, then left me with a long hug and a promise. Tomorrow, this gets louder. I believed her. At 1:43 a.m., I opened my laptop. I pulled up the folder. Ravine 17, my private archive under a fake name, filled with every screenshot, voice memo, bank statement, photo, and video I'd ever captured. Then I opened a new email to carmen.black@investigatus.org. Subject, documentation attached, Aaron Wexler. I had never met Carmen Black. I'd only watched her through late-night reports on corruption cases and cover-ups that made local news look tame. But 2 weeks ago, she'd run a story about a man just like Bryce, a charming donor, a respected business owner who'd left his wife with bruises and the courts with silence. She didn't tell stories. She exposed patterns. And now, I was sending her mine. Dear Ms. Black, I typed, I don't expect you to take my word, so I'm attaching everything. I dragged in the folder. It took 2 minutes to upload. I watched the bar crawl across the screen, each percent another breath leaving my chest. Photos of me in the hospital, the restraining order, the red-stamped power of attorney, and the audio file. Bryce's voice low and sharp. You think anyone believes you? You're just a tired little burden no one wants. I ended the message with one line. If anything happens to me, this is my voice. Publish it anyway. I hit send. Then I closed the laptop. I didn't cry. I made tea, sat by the kitchen window, watched the street below as a lone cab rolled by under flickering streetlights. At 3:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. New email, Carmen Black. Aaron Wexler. I opened it with shaking hands. Subject line, we won't let this disappear. Message, I've seen your proof. This is not going in a drawer. I'll call you at 9 a.m. Stay safe until then. I let the phone fall gently onto the counter. Then I whispered just once into the still air around me. You're not my shame anymore. And I meant it. By Monday morning, the article was live. The hands behind the silence. How 3 women exposed one man and the system that protected him. My name was the first in the story. My face blurred for now. But my voice? Clear. Tired. Unapologetic. Carmen hadn't just published it. She gave it weight. Gave it shape. Laid every piece out like a courtroom summation. The bank transfers, the bruises, the voicemail, the signed affidavits, even the clip from the night Nina recorded Bryce grabbing my wrist. By noon, my inbox was flooding. But one message stopped me cold. From Layla N. Subject, I know him. It read, I read your story. I knew him under a different name. He was my fiancé, 3 years ago. I still have the photos. I still hear his voice in my sleep. Thank you for not staying quiet. I blinked. Another message came half an hour later. From Jess T. We were together 6 years. I never went to the police, but I have recordings, screenshots, emails where he threatened to end my career. I thought I was crazy, until today. I closed the laptop and sat still, palms flat on the table, heart racing, not with panic, but with recognition. It hadn't just been me. He had a pattern. He had a trail. And now we were finding each other. Carmen connected us privately, securely. By Wednesday, the 3 of us were on a Zoom call, faces nervous but determined. Layla was a pediatric nurse from Salt Lake. Jess, a data analyst in Phoenix, both older than me by a few years. Both with the same look in their eyes I'd seen in my own. Worn, alert, no longer afraid, just done. We didn't talk about the worst moments. Not first. We talked about what we had. Jess had his voice on tape. Layla had a notarized therapist letter describing her fear to return home. I had the paperwork. Nina had the timeline. We uploaded everything into a private drive Carmen helped us encrypt, under a fake shell name. No hashtags, no drama, just truth. Then we built a landing page, just one. Not invisible anymore. In simple font, black text on white. 3 names, 3 testimonies, a button marked documentation. No calls for justice, no performative grief. Just this line. We are not asking for justice. We are showing you the proof you refuse to see. At the bottom of the page, I uploaded one last file, Bryce's voicemail. Even if you scream, no one's listening, I added a short caption beneath it. We heard each other. That night, I walked to the corner store and bought tea and lemon bars, my mother's favorite. I didn't know why. Maybe I was mourning something, or maybe I was preparing to bury it for good. By Friday, Bryce was suspended from his firm. The email wasn't vague. Termination review initiated, confidentiality lifted. A public statement will be issued within the hour. I didn't forward it, didn't celebrate. Just stared at the screen with my hands still, breath steady, like I'd finally exhaled something I didn't know I'd been holding since the first bruise. The inbox didn't stop. Most were strangers. Some were women I would never meet. Others were from names I hadn't seen in years. Old friends, professors, a cousin I hadn't spoken to since college. But one message stopped me again. Camille D. I was one of his patients. I always thought something felt off, but no one believed me. Thank you for showing the truth. I sat down. Not from weakness, from the gravity of it. Not just survival. Echo. That afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Taryn Everett, Fulton County DA's office. Her voice was steady, no frills. We're reopening your case. I said nothing at first, just listened. We've reviewed the evidence in the public domain. The audio files were key. The previous decision to close has been overridden. We'll be in contact to schedule your formal deposition. When I finally replied, it wasn't anger in my voice. It wasn't even relief. It was clarity. Thank you for catching up. She understood exactly what I meant. That evening, I pulled out the manila folder I had once called my last resort. Now, it was just closure. I added one more document, signed copies of the restraining order extension. A new clause. Bryce was to surrender all registered firearms within 24 hours. By dusk, I stood outside the courthouse again. Same steps, same wide glass doors. But this time, I wasn't alone. Nina was already there, holding a small candle in a paper cup. Layla and Jess followed, standing beside me in coats and silence. We didn't need speeches. We'd said everything already. I walked up the stairs, folder in hand, and submitted the final divorce petition. No cameras, no crowd, no Bryce. Just the quiet slide of paper into a metal tray. The clerk didn't look up when he stamped it. Anything else? He asked. No, I said. That's all. Outside, the air was cold but clear. Across the street, life moved on. Someone laughed into their phone, a teenager rode past on a skateboard, the light at the corner turned green. I let it all happen. Let it pass by. Let it prove what I'd finally learned. You can lose everything you were supposed to have and still keep everything you truly need. That night, I walked home alone, lit the candle by the window, and whispered to no one in particular. There are bruises no one sees, but healing doesn't ask permission. I didn't look back. Not once.